And the name of this teaching is Iniquity, the hard at heart. Iniquity, the hard at heart. The hard at heart. So, anybody recognize this saying? Who was credited with this phrase? Every black parent ever. Every black parent ever. And that blank gets filled in with a few different words. I'll use the G-rated version. A hard head makes a soft behind. A hard head makes a soft behind. And you know, I used to wonder when I was a kid, what do you mean by hard head? Because everybody's head is hard. Like, if it's not hard, we got problems. Like, but my mom's like, boy, you hard-headed. I'm like, well, so are you. I mean, what's the big deal? We all got hard heads. Like, I didn't get it. I did not get it. I didn't understand, you know? And so we now, as being an adult and having children, I get it. And I think that's one of the things, y'all. Y'all notice that I like to use a lot of the dynamics in our earthly relationships that help us understand the Most High. Because in so many ways, these are things that we are taught through relationship with Him. Like, we're taught these things, and these things come into a place of real, true understanding when we just think about, I have children, so I know how a parent feels when this happens. Or, oh, well, I have a spouse, so I know how a spouse feels when this happens. Or, oh, well, I have employees or people that I manage, so I know how it feels when, you know, whatever it is, you can relate a relationship. In a lot of cases, we can learn something from that. So this is going to be one about being hard-headed. That's what we're talking about today, hard-headed people. So let's start by reading Deuteronomy chapter 29. Deuteronomy chapter 29. We're going to talk about this hard-headedness and the results of being hard-headed. And it says, therefore, you shall guard the words of this covenant and do them so that you prosper in all that you do. So that you prosper in all that you do. All of you are standing today before Yahweh your Elohim, your leaders, your tribes, your elders, and your officers, all the men of Israel, your little ones, your wives, and your sojourner, who is in the midst of your camp, from the one who cuts your wood to the one who draws your water. So that, verse 12, so that you should enter into covenant with Yahweh your Elohim, and into his oath with Yahweh your Elohim, which Yahweh your Elohim makes with you today. Now, did y'all notice who was all there, first of all? So this was the leaders, right? Elders, right? Officers, right? The men, right? The little ones, right? The wives. Y'all see all of that? The sojourner. Woo! Was it the sojourner? Oh, man. The sojourner who in the midst of your camp, from the one who cuts down the wood to the one who draws the water. So even your servants, those doing work for you. All right. So who's all entering into this covenant? Everybody. Everybody. All right. Verse 13. In order to establish you today as a people for himself, and he himself be your Elohim, as he has spoken to you, and as he has sworn to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov. And not with you alone am I making this covenant and this oath, but with him who stands here with us today before Yahweh our Elohim, as well as him who is not here with us today. So now not only is he touching on everybody that's there, but he's also talking about the future generations, those who are not there yet, those who are not even born yet. He's talking to them as well. Verse 16 says, for you know how we dwelt in the land of Mitzrayim, and how we passed through the nations which you passed through, and you saw their abominations. You saw their abominations. These are the people who you're passing through, plus the fact that you actually dwelt in Mitzrayim, where they have plenty of abominations to witness. You saw all of that. All right? And then it says, continuing in that verse 17, and it says, their idols, wood and stone, silver and gold, which were with them, lest there should be among you a man or a woman or a clan or tribe whose heart turns what? Away. Whose heart turns away today from Yahweh our Elohim to go and serve the mighty ones of these nations, lest there should be among you a root bearing bitterness or wormwood. Verse 19, and it shall be when he hears the words of this curse that he should bless himself in his heart. This is him who has walked away, whose heart is turned away. He will bless himself. Is he blessed of Yah? No. He will bless himself in his heart, saying, I have peace, though I walk in the stubbornness of my heart, in order to add drunkenness to thirst. Yahweh would not forgive him, but rather the displeasure of Yahweh and his jealousy shall burn against that man, and every curse that is written in this book shall settle on him. And Yahweh shall blot out his name from under the heavens, and Yahweh shall separate him for evil out of all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in this book of the Torah. According to all the curses that are written in this book of the Torah. So what we have here is a situation where the Most High has told us at the beginning, I'm going into covenant with all of you, right? And then within that understanding, there are some things that you are going to have to do as a result of being a part of that covenant. And if you don't, you are turning away from the Most High. You're turning away. That's what we see in verse 18. And it says, lest there should be among you a man or woman or clan or tribe whose heart turns away today from Yahweh our Elohim to go and serve the mighty ones of these nations, lest there should be among you a root bearing bitterness or wormwood. Roots bear. You sow seeds. The seed dies, germinates, and it begins to sprout what? Roots. So if you ever, has anybody done that little project in school where you grow something in water? Has anybody done that project? Nobody did that project? We did a project. We took, I don't remember what it was because literally I think I was in like the fifth, sixth grade. It was just a few years ago, you know. Despite what my child might say. It was just a few years ago. And so we grew, and if I remember correctly, we used some sort of beans. But we did stuff with it, and whatever kind of bean it was, it could actually sprout and grow in the water. And so that way you could actually see. And so we could see the seed begin to bust open, and we could see the roots begin to take place. The root takes place first. After the seed germinates, the root is established before the fruit. Did y'all catch that? The root is established before the fruit. The fruit is the last thing. The root is the first thing. So now please understand what I'm saying. Once that root is established, now the plant grows up out of the ground. And let's call this a tree or a vine of some sort. You can cut that tree down. You can cut the vine right at the ground. What's going to happen? It's going to grow back. In many cases, y'all, when you simply cut at the limbs of the plant, what are you really doing? Pruning it. You're literally making it stronger so that it can grow stronger. Because the root is established far before the fruit. And so as a result, the limb is going to grow strong enough in order to bear, if it bears leaves or whatever it does, in order to help that fruit. But the last thing that comes is the fruit. So there are many times, like it says here, let's go back to what it says in verse 18. Like, if your heart turns away today and you go serve other mighty ones, this would become a root bearing bitterness. The root itself being established, but the fruit coming much later is what you have to deal with. That's the end results that we have to deal with. So many times we see the fruit, and that's what we're snipping away. That's what we're cutting down. That's what we're trying to get rid of. But the leaves and the limbs and the stalk, and most importantly, the roots have already been what? Established. And so, if we now look, there's these two things. Turning away from the Most High is the Torah of my own mind. That's the Torah of my own mind when I turn away from the Most High. Now, when I'm dealing with the word of the Most High, I'm turning toward him. I'm dealing with what he said to do. I'm dealing with his ways being higher than mine. Because what we again know is that when I turn away, I risk establishing a root that's going to eventually bear bitterness. And at the end of the day, I'm going to have to deal with the fruit from that plant that has been established. So now let's take a look at some of the words that we have seen within this scripture. One of which is H8307. H8307. And this is where it says you walk after the stubbornness of your own heart. And this is in verse 19. So this is what this person says. They say, I have peace in what I am doing. I have peace in what I am doing and what I'm saying and what I'm believing, how I'm walking, as we see in verse 19. But then in verse 19, it tells us something that happens. It says, I have peace though I walk in the stubbornness. Stubbornness. This is the word for stubbornness. And that word is sheri-root. Sheri-root. I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of how to say that right. And so it is, again, H8307. And it means stubbornness, hardness, or firmness. Hardness or firmness. But here's the thing. It's a related word from 8324 in the sense of being twisted. Being twisted. So the stubbornness and the hardness is being twisted. So automatically when I think about twisting, I'm turning. I'm turning. In a lot of cases, I'm turning in the wrong direction, and I'm continuously turning. And so now when it says, I have peace, hey, I'm good. I'm straight. Y'all tripping. It's like the reverse. No, it's y'all, not me. It's y'all. So I'm now, I have peace, though I walk in the firm twisting. I am firmly twisted. There are 10 times that this particular word appears in the Tanakh. 10 times that it's used. You see that sheri-root. 10 times. And y'all, all 10 times, every single time, it is closely related either right before, but mostly right after the word heart. All 10 times. Every time. When you see H8307, you will see H3820. H3820 is leb, the word for heart. And with leb, remember that heart is not just the seat of emotion, because that's what we think about it. Oh, you know, heart emoji, I love you, and all that kind of stuff. The heart, when we look at that word in the Hebrew, it is more of a place where the heart, the emotion, and the intellect come together to help you make decisions. That's the result. So your actions come as a result. The decisions that you make come from that place of your heart. Out of the heart flows the issues of life. That place is where you make decisions. It's where you think through. And when we make decisions, we don't only make them intellectually, but we also make them emotionally. Sometimes it's good to have a balance of both. Sometimes we need more of one and less of the other. It just depends on the situation. That place is where they both come together to help you to decide, do I go left or do I go right? So now, every single time we see, all 10 times we see stubbornness or firmly twisting, is speaking of your heart being firmly twisted. Your heart. Leb. Your leb. Your heart. Y'all remember what lamed is? What is lamed? That's the teacher, right? So that's the guide, the shepherd's staff, the guide, the teacher. And do y'all remember what vav? Beit, I'm sorry. Beit is house. So that again, your heart is that place where Leb or Lamed, you're being guided. Your house is being guided. Your house is being guided. That's where you're making your decisions. That's where you are taking account of things. And so if that place is twisted toward the Most High, then what we do will lead us toward Him. But if that place is twisted toward evil, then your decisions and actions will lead you toward evil. That's where it will lead you. Let's now go over to Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah. We're going to go through some of our history to look at a people who were twisted toward evil. So we're in Isaiah chapter 64. We're going to read verses 3 through 8. Chapter 64, verses 3 through 8. And it reads, "When you did awesome matters, which we did not expect, you came down. Mountains did shake before you. Since the beginning of the ages, they have not heard nor perceived by the ear, nor has the eye seen any Elohim besides you, who acts for those who wait for him." Verse 5, "You shall meet him who rejoices and does righteousness, who remembers you in your ways. See, you were wroth when we sinned in them a long time. And should we be saved? And all of us have become as one unclean, and all our righteousnesses are as soiled rags. And all of us fade like a leaf, and our crookednesses, like the wind, have taken us where? Away. Right back to that away. Turning away, taking away, being led away by a twisted, firmly twisted heart. Verse 7, "And there is no one who calls on your name, who stirs himself up to be strengthened in you. For you have hidden your face from us and have consumed us because of our crookednesses. And now, O Yahweh, you are our Father. We are the clay, and you our potter, and we are all the work of your hand." And so this is now a recognition that, man, we can't make ourselves. Clay can't make itself. Does the clay say to the potter, do this or do that? Or I want to be a this. I want to be a drinking cup. I want to be a mixing bowl. I want to. No. But the potter determines what that clay is to be used for best. And so, when did the mountain shake? When did the mountain shake? When y'all spoke when, where? When they came out of Mitzrayim and he began to speak what? His commands. And as he spoke his commands, the mountain shook. And it kind of lets us know that's what it's talking about, because it says you did awesome matters which we did not expect. You came down mountains and you came down. Mountains did shake before you. So that's when he came down and he sat on that mountain, and his glory was such that they were deathly afraid. Deathly afraid. And just how filthy is our righteousness? Just how filthy is our righteousness? Well, our righteousness, y'all, is as a filthy rag. And that filthy is a word that means as a rag of the menstrual cycle. That's the word that's used there, where it says filthy. And so if we look, let me make sure I got the right one. Aid or aid. Hopefully I'm saying that close to right. But it is Aleph Dalet. And matter of fact, let me make sure I got the correct one. I have them in the right order. 64. And where was that at? 64 and 6. Let me get down there real quick. All right. So yeah, it's the one that is on top. So I did have them in the right order. So the Aleph, the Ayin Dalet 5708. H5708 is the word that is used for filthy, describing our righteousness. And it sounds weird, y'all, but it literally says righteousness is. Like all the stuff that you think is good and great and wonderful, and this is what I want to do, and this is what feels good. Because what did we read in Deuteronomy 29? What did that person say? I have peace because my stuff feels good and it's cool. I'm good. But then we back up to what happens when we turn away. We end up with a seed sown and with roots that now go into the ground and are established. And now we later see the fruits of that bitterness. We see the fruits of that bitterness, and then we have to deal with that. And the thing about wormwood is, yes, it's a cleanser, but it's also a killer. So that's the thing. We, in our own estimation, when we start putting this stuff together, because again, what are we led by? That lib, the teacher, the leader of the house, that heart is the place where we're making our decisions. It's not just where we think about how much we like something or love somebody or dislike something or it's not just emotion, but it is also intellect, and it's where we make decisions. And so then we go to this crookedness. So we see how filthy our righteousness are. But then it speaks of this crookedness. And the word for crookedness is H5771, Avan. Avan. And that word, you'll see a lot of times it's translated as iniquity. So I want to point that out. So when you see iniquity, that is the typically what Avan is translated to. And you see here, if you're reading in the scriptures version, that they translate it to crookedness or crookednesses. And so that's what we see here as we look in verse 6, verse 7. These are a representation of that word Avan. And here's the thing about that. It is important for us to recognize that transgression is breaking the law. But iniquity is a step further in that it is changing the law such that you are convinced you're not breaking it. So iniquity is a step further. Transgression is, man, I messed up. Iniquity is, I have peace. Iniquity has peace in sin. So now let's go back just really quick. I want to go back really quick to what we read. All right, let's see. Yeah. In Deuteronomy 29. I want to go back there really quick, because what did this person say in verse 18 and 19? This person whose heart has turned away in verse 18, begins to serve other Elohims, other mighty ones. And then by verse 19, what is happening there? It says, I have peace though I walk in the stubbornness of my heart. I have peace though I walk in a hardly twisted manner. I'm good. And this, now you can see, because that happens after verse 19. You can see now the fruit that has taken place from that root. You can see now the fruit that has taken place. And so again, the iniquity is what that is. That Avon. Because again, you have determined that this sin is acceptable. And so iniquity will cause us to be firmly twisted toward evil. That's basically what it's saying. Iniquity will cause us to be firmly twisted. It is, I am secure in my sin. And we would totally be convinced that the contrary, in fact, is a detriment to us. That if you say otherwise, that in fact, that is evil. So we call good evil and evil good. A key indicator, because sometimes we ain't there yet, but I'm going to tell you, a key indicator that we are headed in the wrong direction is when sin no longer invokes guilt. When sin no longer invokes guilt, you are headed toward iniquity. You are turned. You're turned and you're on your way to iniquity. Because if it doesn't invoke guilt, it will at some point in the future invoke the ignorance of it being wrong. And when it gets to that point, we then are one step away from having peace in the stubbornness of our own heart. Now, most times sin will continue to be luring and pleasurable and desirable. It's not going to go away. As a matter of fact, when it does go away, that is like the pinnacle of overcoming. It's like this thing just detests me. This sinful thing detests me. Then that is the pinnacle. You got that thing nicked. But here's the thing. Hasatan wants to make all manner of flavors available to us. All flavors, all sizes, all colors, all shapes. Every variety you can think of. Because if that one didn't get you, maybe this one will. So yes, it feels good to get to the point where the sin itself is no longer pleasurable or alluring. I can't stand the smell of this, or I can't stand the taste of this, or I have absolutely no desire to see this, or no desire to go to this place, or no desire to eat this, or whatever it is. And so we have to be on guard. We have to be on guard. Because if we don't, those sins that so easily beset us Where are they? Crouching at your door, and its desire is for you. And that word, besets, I looked that up because I was like, I assumed that I knew what that word meant. The sin that so easily besets us, but I didn't know what it meant. That's what I learned. But what it means is to stand around or to be in every direction. So the sin that so easily entangles, surrounds us all around. And that's the thing we have to be careful of. Because when that thing goes from transgression to iniquity, it's a tough recovery. It's a tough recovery. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 2. Isaiah chapter 2. Because we're being led by our hearts. And there's crookedness in our hearts that's leading. And so if that's the case, that iniquity, where will that crookedness, where will that iniquity lead? Where does it lead? Isaiah chapter 2, verses 3 through 8 says, and many people shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the Elohim of Jacob, and let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion comes forth what? Out of Zion comes forth what? The Torah and the word of Elohim from Jerusalem. And he shall judge between the nations, and shall reprove many peoples. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, which means they don't need them for weapons anymore, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither teach battle anymore. O house of Jacob, come and let us walk in the light of Yah. That's where Torah leads us. But look at verse 6. For you have forsaken your people, the house of Jacob, because they have been filled from the east, and practice magic like the Philistines. And they are pleased with the children of foreigners. And their land is filled with silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. And their land is filled with horses, and there is no end to their chariots. And their land is filled with idols. They bow themselves to the work of their own hands, to what their fingers have made. Let's keep going. Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 2. Jeremiah chapter 2. We're talking about where will crookedness lead us. We see that the witness was, let's go up and learn the ways of Yahweh. And we see right away that sometimes availability of resources leads us right down the path of crookedness. Because they had the gold, because they had the silver, because they had those things, now what did they do with them? They made idols and they bowed down. And so let's read Jeremiah chapter 2. We're going to start at verse 21 and take that to 24. And it reads, yet I have planted you a choice vine, all of it a true seed. How then have you turned before me into the degenerate plant of a strange vine? You've turned. You've twisted. You've twisted, you've turned. And it says, although you wash yourself with lye and use much soap, yet your crookedness is ingrained before me, declares the Master Yahweh, because there was a root of bitterness. from turning away. Verse 23 says, how do you say, I am not defiled? I have not gone after Baals. See your way in the valley. Know what you have done. A swift dromedary breaks loose in her ways. A wild donkey used to the wilderness, sniffing the wind in the desire of her being, in her time of mating. Who turns her away? All those who seek her need not weary themselves. In her month, they find her. And what is that saying? That this wild donkey, when it has determined that it has to go, or that wild horse determines it has to go to a certain place, and it's its time of mating, there is nothing you can do to stop that horse from doing what it has made up in its mind to do. Now, I ain't got no horse. I got a dog. And when my dog has made up in her mind that she sees something she wants, if she ain't on that leash and she knows it, she out. And I can call her name and I can say, come, and I can see it in her eyes when she turns and she's like, something interesting. Gone. And so this is why it says in 22, listen, you can wash with lye and you can use much soap, but your crookedness is ingrained. It is embedded. You have turned away, and that crookedness is what? Firm. It's firm. It's firmly established. And that's the issue. That's the issue. And so let's continue on. Let's go to Jeremiah. We're still in Jeremiah, sorry. Jeremiah chapter 44. Where will crookedness lead you? Well, that dromedary, it led that dromedary wherever it had its mind set to go. Where does crookedness lead us? Chapter 44, verse 15 through 18. Chapter 44, verse 15 through 18 of Jeremiah. It's up there, yeah. And it reads, and none of the remnant of Yehudah who have gone into the land of Mitzrayim to sojourn there shall escape or survive, lest they return to the land of Yehudah, to which they are longing to return to dwell there. For they shall not return except those who escape. Then all the men who knew that their wives had burned incense to other mighty ones, and all the women who stood by, a great assembly, and all the people who dwelt in the land of Mitzrayim and Pathros, answered Yirmiyahu, saying, we are not going to listen to you in the matter about which you speak to us in the name of Yahweh. They asked the man, what says Yahweh? He tells them. They say, we ain't listening to what you said. Even though they know he's speaking in the name of the Most High. But it says, but we shall do whatever has gone out of our mouth, to burn incense to the sovereigness of the heavens, and to pour out drink offerings to her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our sovereigns, and our heads in the cities of Yehudah and in the streets of Jerusalem. And we had plenty of food and were well off and saw no evil. They have peace. They have peace in the hardness of their heart, because they see it as it's all good. And what is one of the things I noticed here is that it speaks now to everyone the same way it spoke to in Deuteronomy 29, going in the covenant. Everybody. But then it also does the same thing by addressing the fathers, the sovereigns. It's talking about generations. It's talking about those in charge, those who have headship, those who are in rulership, all the way down to those who are in the streets. Everybody. And so this is one of those things where can we say, well, everybody's doing this and everybody's prosperous and so-and-so's doing it and look at their church and so-and-so's good and look at how wonderful their marriage is, or so-and-so is doing it and look how great they're living. They're rich. The twisting, that's what happens as a result of the twisting. We begin to see things how we want to see it. And we call evil good, good evil. Verse 18, but since we cease burning incense to the sovereigness of the heavens and pouring out drink offerings for her, we have lacked all and have gone and have been consumed by the sword and by scarcity of food. Now they are convincing themselves that when they do the wrong thing, they are blessed. And when they do the right thing, they're cursed. Everything is flipped. Everything is twisted. Twisted. This is why we can't lean to our own understanding. This is why we can't lean to our own understanding. Let's go to Ecclesiastes. Let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 10 through 13. Chapter 8, verse 10 through 13. And it says, and so I saw the wrong ones buried, and they came and went from the place of set apartness, and they were forgotten in the city where they had so done. That too is futile. Because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily. I'm going to pause there. What is that saying? Because they just got finished saying, hey. We was offering unto the sovereignness of heaven, and we had food, and the land was good, and all was well. And a delayed curse made them think, oh, and by the way, when we stopped doing those things, that's when all of this scarcity of food and stuff started happening. Wait a minute. Can we always judge immediate fruit, immediate evil, or immediate judgment, I'll say, on whether something is right or wrong? No, can't do it. Because again, verse 11 says, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is filled in them to do evil. He didn't strike me dead as soon as I did it. He ain't strike me dead as soon as I said it. He ain't strike me dead as soon as I ate it. He didn't strike me dead as soon as I saw it. He didn't strike me dead as soon as I went there. But y'all, what happens with the root? What's happening? Roots are being established. They're being established. What did I say earlier? The root comes far before the fruit. Just because you didn't see that fruit, just because you didn't drop immediately dead, don't mean that that's a root bearing bitterness. The only thing we have to rely on, y'all, is the Torah of the Most High. That's what we have. That's our gauge. Verse 12. Although a sinner is doing evil 100 times and his life is prolonged, yet I know that there is good to those who fear Elohim, who fear before him. Again, just because it's not executed speedily does not allow you to just walk in that thing. Because it can be done hundreds of times over. But we have to know that there is good to those who fear Elohim. Verse 13 says, but it shall not be well with the wrong one, nor would he prolong his days as a shadow, because he does not fear before Elohim. We have to know, again, just because there's not immediate fruit, one of the things that happens, again, what did I say about the direction? We are faced in the wrong direction when transgression no longer invokes regular old sin. I know I did it and I know it was wrong. When it no longer invokes guilt, we are headed toward what? Iniquity. Iniquity. And when that iniquity sets in, then that's when we start telling ourselves we good, we have peace. That's when we start having that twisted heart. That's when we start convincing ourselves nothing's wrong, something wrong with y'all, not me. Why y'all coming against me? All of these people talking about this, and next thing you know, what happens? Now I can sin 100 times, and because there isn't speedily execution, I am now convinced of it, that I'm good. Because not only am I delighting in my pleasure and I'm calling wrong right and right wrong, but I also don't have the immediate execution of judgment. And because of that, I've convinced myself now that I'm good to walk into this. And what does the scripture say? The Most High will turn us over to a what? And he will allow us to believe what? Lies. And so if you are allowed to believe a lie, is it a lie to you? To you, it's true is true is true. It's, yeah, like Miss Cece said, I be hearing that nowadays. I want to tell my truth, my truth, my truth. Well, isn't there the truth? Isn't the truth no matter what? Might be your point of view or your situation or whatever, but truth is truth. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13. At the end of the day, y'all. At the end of the day. If we want to not be led down that path by our own heart and the stubbornness of our own heart, then it's real basic. Now I'm going to say, and I say that tongue in cheek, it's basic to know it, but it's a different thing to walk it. Because we're dealing with inherited iniquity. And we're dealing with iniquity that is also not just inherited, but embedded. And it's embedded not just in us and in our hearts, but it's embedded in the society and the culture all around us. And everybody's telling us that you have peace. Everybody's saying, have peace in this thing. Have peace in this thing. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And as a matter of fact, you sometimes get to the point where when you call something wrong with it, you get labeled. You a hater, you this, you that, you blah, blah, blah. You get all of this stuff going on simply because you recognize that sin is sin. So I'm saying it's easy. The answer is easy, but the walk takes a lot of work. And we can't underrepresent the amount of work that we have to put into walking and not walking in the stubbornness of our own hearts. But here's the answer. Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commands, for this applies to all mankind. In other words, do that, and he will help everything else fall in place. Seek ye first the kingdom of Elohim and his what? Because what is our righteousness? It's filthy rags. And so the goal there is that he will add all of these things to us. He will walk us down that path of righteousness. He will walk us through the shadow of death. He will walk us through those challenging places and challenging times, but we have to lean not to our own understanding. And at the end of the day, fear Elohim, guard his commands. Hallelujah. Praise y'all.